This conference will now be recorded.
As we are all here tonight, you can see that I'm in this space that is not the studio space where we have Claire's beautiful designs. I was going to host this event out of the studio space in New Bedford. My name is Adrienne Burke, and the studio is called the South Coast Surface Design Studio, and we're hosting Clare as our featured artist right now for September. So this is our second event that we're running in a series of events. We'll be finishing up on September 25th with the closing event. And then Claire's going to take her designs over to Rhode Island Fashion Week. And the other exciting news here is that Peter Walker will also be in Fashion Week at the same time over in Providence. We'll talk more about that later. And we're looking forward to hear from Rick Davis about Brooklyn's Fashion Week or Style Week, whatever the real title is. But to get started, what I'd like to do is start showing a few pictures. Since I am not in my studio space, the weather was a little iffy tonight. We were supposed to have storms, and I couldn't leave my son on his own with my dog in those conditions. So I'm talking with all of you and happy to see all of you from my home studio. I work between the New Bedford studio and my home studio, and I'm not going to show you pictures of my home studio besides what you see behind me here. But what I'd like to do is share the screen, and I'll show some pictures from the studio as an introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my shared screen option, and then I'm going to go ahead and start showing this. Hopefully, you can see these images in my screen. Is that right? Maybe of the studio, and I'm going to navigate through these for you. This is a picture of the South Coast Surface Design Studio in New Bedford. It's in downtown New Bedford. I'm actually very close to the communal space, which is a awesome art space that Peter Walker is running. We're just a block away on Union Street in downtown New Bedford. We'd love for you all to come and visit us there. After we were meeting virtually online, please understand this is an extended invitation anytime to come up and join us in New Bedford. I'm a textile designer and an apparel designer. So out of my studio, I get to work with great artists like Clare and help other artists produce designs. And I'm also working on my own textiles. This is a fabric that I've printed using my digital printers, using some photography from an artist that I'm collaborating with who's a photography artist. So I'm working on different designs that will at some point make it to the market. It's been a slow startup process for me. I opened up this new business in this studio in 2019. But these are things that I'm just showing as examples that are in the works right now. And this is our presentation poster for Claire's show for Thunder Lily at the studio. The show opened on August 28th. It's located at South Coast Surface Design on Union Street, New Bedford. And here are some of the pictures of the show set up in the studio on the mannequins right now. Claire is demonstrating all of the amazing animation that happens with the technology that she's incorporated into these fashion designs. And it's been beautiful to have these designs in the studio. On Saturday, the 25th of September, we'll be having another in-studio presentation. And then these designs will move over to the runway at Rhode Island Fashion Week that night, on that Saturday night, 25th. So if y'all want to come up to our area at that point in time, it's going to be a fun time. We're going to be there from 2 p.m. until 4 p.m. on the Saturday the 25th. And then Fashion Week is, I think, from 6 until 9 p.m. in Providence. You'll see here, there's a collection of 6 designs altogether that Claire has on display, and they're beautifully presented. Each one of them has their own special components and different types of technology that allows that skirt to roll up like flower petals, and they're beautifully crafted. The fashions are wonderful. I'm looking forward to seeing them on the live runway coming up in a couple weeks. Tonight we're presenting a conversation, and this was one of Claire's great ideas, to host a panel discussion. And thank you all for joining us tonight and participating in this discussion, talking about the exchange between fashion and music. We have Clare from Thunder Lily. We've got DJ Cherish The Luv, Fashion Week. This is Rick Davies from Fashion Week Brooklyn. And Dominique, Danny Slucky is not here tonight, but we do have Dominique Rene, jewelry designer. And we also have Peter Walker, who I often call Linnell. Peter Walker from I'm Still Ill, our wonderful community leader in New Bedford, who's doing a whole lot of different things. And the subject of music and fashion is something that we all feel very passionate about. And I'm excited to hand the virtual mic over to Clare. Sorry for this fuzzy image. Clare Tattersall is going to moderate the discussion tonight and introduce each one of our designers that are here tonight. And I'm going to introduce these images. And then, Clare, I'm going to turn off my screen and hand over the mic to you. I'm going to make myself silent for now. And if everybody, looks like everybody already has their mic on silent.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. Thank you for being such a gracious host at the gallery as well. I greatly appreciate it. And Dominique, Cherish, Rick, Peter, I really appreciate you being here and giving your time and your brilliance and your opinions as well. So I'm really excited to share those with everybody else. So I'm Clare Tattersall. I'm the founder of Thunder Lily and the director of Digital Fashion Week New York. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves as only you can. Dominique, shall we start with you? I'll go Dominique, Cherish, Peter, and Rick, because that's the order I see you on my screen. Dominique, do you want to take it away and introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, Claire. My name is Dominique Rene, and I am the designer of a 3D printed line of accessories, and each collection of mine actually is brought to life by a carefully curated playlist. So for me, fashion and music definitely go hand in hand. Thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm DJ Cherish The Luv. I am a Bose professional DJ, composer, producer, sound synthesis, sound designer, and I love to collaborate with all the creatives out here. So that's why Claire had me out here. Thank you for having me.
Hello, my name is Peter Walker. I'm just a lion of all hunts. Really, this experience started with me being immersed in hip hop and learning the culture and the different fabrics of African American culture. And here I am today, still doing that work in the community while bridging the gap between hip hop culture and the 5 pillars.
Hi, my name is Rick Davy, and I'm the founder of BK Style Foundation and Fashion Week Brooklyn. Thank you very much, Claire. I love working with Claire. She have done some amazing work with us. I love those dresses presentation, and we love fashion and music. I think you can't have one without the other. So I'm really excited to be part of this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I have some questions for all of you, and I'm going to ask all of you in different orders as well. So everyone's going to have a very different answer for my first question. How does fashion play a role in your life? So Rick, I'm going to start with you because fashion is your life.
It's a big part of my life because it's what I do. Um, and I really like it because I think it helps you to express yourself, even if you're not an artist. And I think fashion can make each of one of us feel like we're an artist or feel very creative in any small way, because we always have to figure out what we need to wear and how we're going to present ourselves to others. And it's almost like a art for your own body. So the way you choose your style is the way you present your art. So I think for me, it's an everyday moment of presenting art. Every day you step out is a piece of art that you're presenting to people, which is yourself.
Thank you. Dominique, how does fashion play a role in your life?
I think both as a consumer and as a designer, I use it to express myself. As a designer, more so to the fullest form, because all of my collections are actually inspired by things that I've gone through. I say that my collection is a sassy exploration of life, love, and loss. But even as a consumer, like if I'm in a mood, then what I'm wearing is going to reflect that mood, you know? So, yeah.
Thank you. Cherish, I know you're going to have a
I mean, Dominique and Rick, you said so much of what I wanted to say already: style, mood, expression, fashion. I'm not shy about wearing sunglasses in the house in a dark room, so that's kind of how fashion plays a role in my life too. But fashion events are one of my favorite vehicles to play and produce music for, and to support the visual art that's happening before me. I feel like fashion and just personal preferences and expression, it's just part of just our holistic health. So I turn to fashion when I'm looking for inspiration for my music. I look at what's hot, what's happening now, look at colors, look at textures, see how people are moving. And oftentimes I'll create music from that space.
Thank you. Peter, how about you? I'm dying to hear your opinion.
Bunch of these people have already eloquently put it, as I would like to say. So just to add on to that, like fashion is life on many levels. Since the dawn of time, fashion and music have been intertwined from tribal nature to now. So it's a part of our tribalism and who we are as a species, as humanity, and it represents our culture in different ways. For me, fashion can play numerous roles depending on the decorum of the situation you can see yourself in, but all of them should allow for your own personal flair and signature. The simple concept instills confidence, comfortability, and it communicates something about you.
Thank you. So my next question is, some people consider fashion a superficial art form. What would you say to that? So Rick, as the director of Fashion Week Brooklyn, I'm going to start with you again.
Well, I could agree and disagree, because for some people it probably could be superficial, but I think on a whole it's not. And I totally, from my personal opinion, I would agree it's not superficial, because it's so very important, like we all just said, to everyone's life, and your self-expression, your mood. It kind of set the tone for your day, even if you don't think yourself as a fashionista. It kind of sets your tone and your mood. You go to sleep at night thinking what you might wear tomorrow. You buy a new outfit, you start thinking how you're going to put it together. You know, as Cherish would say, you probably put on as soon as you buy an outfit, you would go back home, you would put on some music, and you would prance around the house, try it on, put your jewelry on from Dominique, and check out yourself with a selfie, you know. So it could be superficial for some people, yes, but I think for most people, it's a form of expression, and you know how we feel on our moods, and it kind of helps us to get our day going.
Thank you. So Peter, you touched on some ideas about culture as well. Would you like to?
Well, no, absolutely. As I stated before, like fashion is the fabric of culture and the roots of many civilizations' characteristics. It is an identifier to appreciate the plethora and the dichotomy of the things that bring us together, but also set us apart. Nothing about fashion is superficial, in my opinion, when on many levels it dictates the vibes and interactions that we have as humanity. So again, to me, there's no, unless you're looking at it from a superficial lens and not understanding the roots of the fashion and the different self-expression, all the way down to I learned a lot about fashion through West Indian carnivals. So again, it's just about, learning expression and learning others, I think, is important when it comes to fashion.
Great points. Thank you. Cherish.
Well, if you're going to go by just the pure definition of what superficial is, being something that occurs on the surface or the skin, okay, sure. But if you're going to, even if you don't like to invest in fashion and it's just not your thing, you can't deny that people who are into it find joy. So I wouldn't find anything that creates joy in people as superficial at all.
That's an excellent point. Excellent point. Dominique.
I definitely agree with what DJ Cherish just said. But I mean, I think that it can be superficial, yeah. But I think so can almost any other type of art. It doesn't make it any less art. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's a matter of opinion.
I also think a $23 trillion industry is not superficial. So yes, and Dominique, I really agree with you. We can attribute that to any art form as well. And I think sometimes we forget that fashion is about creativity and expression, and we're sort of a little diverted by fast fashion, which really are clothes and not necessarily fashion. That's my 2 cents with it. So we looked at how fashion plays a role in your life, but let's ask, how do you play a role in fashion? What do you do that makes a difference, or how do you interact with other people? How do you interact in the role of fashion? Dominique, let's start with you with this.
You said me, right? Okay, sorry. So yeah, as a designer of a line of jewelry, I feel like I try to use my designs in a way to relate to others. So, I mean, some of my collections have explored heartbreak or just everyday things that we go through. So I think that I try to use what I do to empower others to embrace their own experiences and grow from them.
Thank you. Cherish, I know you have a lot of interesting interactions. So how do you play a role in the life or the world of fashion?
I think, my live events range from all kinds of live events, but I think that when I think back to the fashion ones, we as the people who make it audible create that part of the experience. And when we play something that's up tempo, you see colors brighter. We create the sonic part. I create the sonic part and oftentimes compose music for people's pieces. And I find it to be what a wonderful collaboration. As a music person, I just love to collaborate with the designers and the dancers and the dreamers. And that moment is just these hot moments. And it comes and goes. And I think that's also kind of what's fashionable about just creativity in general. So yeah, the main point for me, my role in fashion is just make it audible.
And you've created the soundtrack for my designs when they were purely in the virtual space and we couldn't actually interact with them as well. But I know you have a lot more ideas that we're going to hear about in the future. Peter, can you tell us about how you are in the world of fashion?
Sure. So originally, I didn't realize the role that fashion was taking on me. Just, being a consumer of the neighborhood, the vibe, the environment, the music, the culture. But as I've matured and evolved a little bit, I went from being an an audible part of the aspect of it to really turning into a production side, and I'm understanding the nuances of all aspects, from the visual to the audible to everything, the textile, everything. So my role in fashions is really in my space is to instill positive affirmations and messages through the same time, creating something that can converge intersectionalities of differing backgrounds. Fashion breaches many barriers such as music, and they create a universal language of sorts to the general public. So even things that we commonly couldn't understand, a lot of the times the way we find ways to communicate through with each other is through our music and through our fashion, food, and things of that nature. So I think I play a role in the gathering of those roles, of those worlds, and the convergence.
So that's really interesting. And the next question, I'm going to start with you because we're coming back to intersectionalities. So Rick, please don't be humble because you're hugely influential in the fashion world. You are the name that everybody in New York and Brooklyn knows, and you have a really interesting history as well. So can you tell us something about how you are in the world of fashion?
For me, I really like this world so much because I think the idea that I can, and that's why I started what I started, because the idea that I can create a platform for people like Dominique and other designers to actually showcase the world really makes me happy. And now that we're in this whole sustainable fashion movement, I remember when we first started the whole sustainable thing, we would call it eco-friendly. And that really piqued my interest, the whole idea that we could save the planet. And then here I connected with you and bringing it now into a digital world. So the whole idea, the way fashion evolves and move around, and I get a chance to play a part in that, to provide a platform, not just to showcase, but to educate people also. It really makes it very interesting to me. And then true fashion has helped me to build up an amazing network of people. For example, working with you, Claire. Now I met Cherish. We had an amazing day the other day when we had lunch, and it was all music and fashion. Even just sitting down and people watching, it's so interesting, and you can learn so much. So for me, it impacts me, fashion, and I also hope that I could impact it in some way by presenting and creating those platforms for other people to create and showcase their work.
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned our collaboration because we are collaborating with Cherish. We've got an augmented reality fashion exhibition coming up, and Cherish is doing soundtrack for that as well. We're still working out the logistics of the soundtrack, but it's going to be very exciting. So Peter, you mentioned intersectionality. So do you feel that the boundaries around different art forms are clearly drawn?
So I like to separate the creative aspect and the business aspect. There are boundaries in place in the business aspect, as fashion and music converge and commercialization gets into that aspect of it. But when we're talking about the creative world, fashion and different art forms that come together are actually the things that create an ecosystem for artists. I believe that they feed off of one another, and they all need each other in some regard to motivate and stimulate more creativity. So there are lines as far as the business aspect, but I think that those lines truly don't exist amongst the pure creatives that are doing this to create. They're not concerned with the bottom line per se. So when those things merge and the ideas and the conceptions are formulated, I think that in a lot of ways, just the creative purely in that creative basis breaks down a lot of barriers and boundaries.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's move on to Cherish, because I know that you bring music to a lot of different places. So can you talk about boundaries or lack of boundaries around different art forms and whether they're clearly drawn or hazy or don't exist at all?
Yeah, I'm an audiovisual artist. I'm also an author. It's all coming from the same place for me, So I think the boundaries that exist are just how we actually perceive the things via which sense we use. And for me, I just feel like it's all just delicious consumption of inspirational, motivational offerings from every single person who's got something to give, you know. And I think that when you look at it that way, no, there aren't really boundaries. It just, I take it all in and it gets processed in my entire system, and I feel better, and I then output something in return. I think that if people saw creativity like that more, instead of I'm an artist, therefore I paint in oil, or I'm a musician, therefore I play violin or whatever other classical music instrument versus electronica, so on. I think if people stop seeing the boundaries that are so simple and simplified that way and just see it more like a human experience, I think that would be so much better for our mental health. We need that more than ever now, I feel. That's why I've been taking creativity to different spaces and doing workshops and working with folks of all ages and all backgrounds, just to get people expressing and to share and tell their story. It's so important as human beings. It's imperative.
And I'm glad that you raised the issue of inspirational, because you are truly inspirational. And I think everyone, you should check out each other's Instagram as well, because I think it's hard in a panel discussion to really see the wealth and the richness of everybody and what you actually all have to offer. And it's very dependent on the questions that I ask you as well. But when you look at Instagram, or your websites or anything, then you can learn so much more about somebody. Dominique, can you talk to us as well about intersectionality and boundaries around different creative forms?
I feel like a lot has been said, but I feel like we're living in a time where lines are definitely blurred, and I think that's amazing, because it's hard when you feel like you have to be boxed in. So, I mean, I guess that's my little 2 cents. I think that it definitely, like, we're definitely, the lines are very blurred. I think it all kind of works together. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
I think that's a great point. And when I work with children as well, they don't really feel that they are siloed in any kind of way. And I think the future, we are just gradually blurring the lines more and more. But Rick, you as a director of Fashion Week Brooklyn, you see a lot of creativity. Can you give us your input on that?
Yeah, I do, and I like that what Cherish said, and also what Dominique. I like what everyone said actually. What I would say as far as boundaries, I think the boundaries are what we create and what other people sometimes create for us, and those are the boundaries. And I'm so glad we are into more of a digital space, because it helps. In the past, we had more boundaries, I think, but I think now that we live in more of a digital kind of a world, I think the boundaries and the line, as Dominique would say, a little bit more blurred, and there's not so much boundaries outside of the one we create. And as Cherish said, if we could really open up and make it more of a human experience, more of those, the line will get less blurred and we'll have less boundaries. But one of the major boundaries I see still in the fashion business is between the, for lack of a better word, the have and the have-nots. So I think that's where some boundary would lie for me, where it's almost like where we have the luxury line, the fast fashion, and the sustainable fashion, and the technology part of it. So I think we still have to break down some of those boundaries to help some of our emerging designers and young designers, give them that space to come up and to be a brand. But as I said, thank God for technology. Almost everyone has that opportunity now. Before, you had to find and get someone to market you or write a story about you in a newspaper. But as we see, we are full of influencers, and we are our own influencers, and we can create a brand, and we could get more people to like it, get more people internationally to see it. We don't have to wait for someone to write a story in a magazine. We don't have to wait to be in Vogue. We no longer have to wait for Anna Wintour to verify us and say who we are. We can create those space on our own, within our own community and our own, our own network of people. And that's the whole idea of having this kind of conversation is great. And because I didn't know Dominique before, I didn't know Cherish before, but now here we have a whole new community that makes my boundary less, because now I'm opening up to new people.
It's true, and we've had to extend our boundaries as well. While we have all the media available to us, we also have to become more of a business person and more able to use all these different skills as well. So we're blurring the boundary between the arts and business very much as independent artists. You really have to. So let's start talking about music. Let's look first of all about what do you do to promote the value of music? And does this overlap with other art forms? So Cherish, I have to start with you with this question.
Basically my life, yeah. This question is definitely, I don't even know where to begin. I think the overarching theme of music in my life is just music heals. And music is I don't know who coined this phrase, but it stuck with me. Music is what emotions sound like. And I come from a culture, Philippine American, who I grew up, we don't express emotions so much until we're dancing or singing and expressing through these mediums. And music has been such an integral role in my personal healing from trauma, from breast cancer, from all of these things that life has thrown at me. And I see it as a very important, it's not just something to support fashion, it's something to support just overall holistic health. It is so important for expression and understanding that our body is made of water and needs to vibrate. We need to move, we need to listen, and we need to sing with each other. We need to do all these things in order to feel balance with this world that's so fast and so digital, and just, all of the things that support more stress in our lives. Music for me undoes so much of that. And I know a lot of us here feel that. I also love understanding the frequencies around music, like why does something that sounds like this make me feel like this? And I see that also in colors and how it translates and how people rock what they're wearing. I feel like there's a term I've been thinking about for myself in this pandemic healing, that as I've been getting to know myself in my solitude during lockdown, that I hadn't started to get to really know myself until I started to really get to know myself musically in a deeper way when I was creating. And perhaps not everyone is musical, but I think it can translate for everyone as you don't start to get to really know yourself until you tap into, undo what society has done to you and tap into your personal fierce frequency. We all have it. And when we start creating from there, and you see people in fashion expressing from that space. We saw someone on the sidewalk with their very fierce frequency, and they're really living like more colorfully, more energetically. There's something extra there. So I like to put that out there as a conversation. Like, music doesn't just mean what you hear on the radio. It's frequencies, it's the sound that we're hearing in my New York City apartment. When you tap into those frequencies in yourself, you can express and understand so much more about creativity and people in general. And I think that's really important.
So beautifully and eloquently expressed. I love how you talk about us being water, 98% water, and that water creates balance. That's such an amazing thing to remember throughout everything that we do. That's incredible. Thank you. Peter, I would love to hear about your involvement with music.
So as I said a little bit earlier, and to touch on some of what Rick was talking about, one of the ways that we promote values of not just music but other art forms is that was the concept behind creating this space in downtown New Bedford. There was at one time a physical barrier for people of color and marginalized communities to have a safe space in the downtown area to practice their art. And also building those relationships with the current establishments. How do you bridge that gap for people who are non-traditional artists, couldn't afford to go to school? So we created a space here, the communal space, which is a diverse arts cultivator. And literally what we do here is we have a studio in the back and we allow artists to gallery their artwork here at no cost. And we literally give all that money back to the artists, because the concept we're trying to change is going from starving artists, striving artists, to thriving artists. So it's a 3-phase program that we're going through here. And a part of that aspect that really helped me get to this point of opening the communal space was when I started taking over the music festival, the Third Eye Open Music Festival in downtown New Bedford as well. And in that process, again, I cannot stress enough how important the pillars of hip hop have been for me in this experience. And then understanding the other 9 elements that KRS-One talks about, which are breaking, MCing, graffiti art, DJing, beatboxing, street fashion, street language, street knowledge, and street entrepreneurialism, which is talking about trade and business. So this gives you a full wraparound. If you didn't understand this, if you were only consuming the music from the radio the way it is now, especially in today's age with no balance, this gives you a full wraparound of what you can actually utilize these tools for. Instead of a kid thinking my ad-libs have to be like Migos, or my ad-libs have to be like this, or my cadence has to be this way, it's really giving people back those empowerment tools to express themselves in the best way they can. And that's what's imperative, is having equal opportunity and equitable platforms, as Rick was talking about earlier, to express these things. So I think a large part of this, when we talk about the arts endowments and things like that, of course, there is some responsibility to the institutions and establishments, but it's also something that was innate in us as a community and as a village. Fashion, arts, all forms of art in all mediums. And I think that there's some onus on us as people, as humanity, to start creating our own creative spaces and taking back some of that power on our own ability. And like Rick said, creating our networks so we can spread the love and spread these different art forms across different cultures and different backgrounds.
That was brilliantly explained, how all these different parts of our culture work together and support each other and create one overall vision at the end of the day. That was really brilliant. Thank you so much. Dominique, I think you have a really interesting perspective on this. Can you give us your point of view?
Sure. So for me, like I stated earlier, each one of my collections is brought to life by a carefully curated playlist. My actual tagline for my brand is produced from a playlist of emotions. So what DJ Cherish said really resonated with me. I think she said music, it was something with music and emotions, or music is expressing emotions or something like that, but it really resonated with me. So for me, designing from that perspective and bringing things to life that way, I guess what I try to do is for, the consumers of my brand, I try to give them the full experience. I try to take them kind of like on a journey of like where my head is, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling as I am actually going through these things, because everything that I do has been inspired by something that I've lived or felt or whatever the case. So with the release of each collection, I actually released a playlist as well, just to try to like give some more insight and I guess kind of like invite people in a little bit.
It's such a cool, unique, brilliant idea as well. So emotional jewelry. Rick, can you tell us?
I love this. This is just, Dominic, I just love what you just said. And all I could hear from you saying that is like, I see a collaboration between Peter and you, DJ Cherish and you, for your next 2 collection. There you have the connection to your music. It is so brilliant. I love it. There you have 2 connectors. Talking about music for me is almost like you would say what? The chicken before the egg, or the egg before the chicken. Well, however, for me, I think music comes first. Because if you think about it, music inspires everything. When you was growing up, at least for me, I would learn everything about fashion through music, from Michael Jackson to Diana Ross, from Mahogany to Donna Summer. I mean, all of these were like music people, but their fashion and the music that went along with it was just so inspiring, and it what kind of set the tone. So I think I really have to take my hats off to the people in the music industry, because they're the one who set the tone for all of the mood, including fashion. So you guys are really, what do you say, the chicken before the egg? I think, I don't know which one comes first, but music comes first.
So Rick, you just answered my next question at the same time as well, is how relevant are music celebrities to the fashion industry? So we're going at slightly a tangent, but really bringing what you just said, and Peter as well, when you're talking about like the art on the walls and the language that we speak and everything, creating one entire conceptual image. So Peter, can I go straight to you for this as well? How relevant do you think music celebrities are to the fashion industry?
So, again, I think in this new age of wherever we are in the paradigm of the space between the nuance between business and creatives, is dictating a lot of this. If I take you back to a time where, do you remember when we used to like actually discover music? Whereas nowadays, a lot of music discovers us. It makes it to a popular playlist or what have you. And when you see placements, music is, to me, what is the greatest marketing tool that has ever existed. And someone that was savvy in marketing figured that out. And now you find an influx of product placements. You name it. It's all in the music, naming books, stories, what have you. That wouldn't be happening because when you talk about marketing, we all know that, when you're trying to sell someone, it's an emotional buy most of the time. So if music makes you emote, if fashion makes you emote, if celebrities are the ones that are usually the proxy for that emotion, or that creative emotive state. Typically, we tend to follow behind these trends. People follow trends, which is fine. So yes, they have a vital role in the consumption of art, and especially now more than ever. I think in a lot of ways in the early, again, I do a comparison to hip hop a lot. And I've studied that a lot. So in the early days, it was like Run DMC, like that's what started this whole wave of Adidas in Boston. And like you go to other places, you're known for Boston and Adidas being synonymous with one another. And that came from that celebrity lifestyle, which was from a New York artist, imagine that. And then things of that became something called the Adidas tree. That is well known commonly around the Boston area, where people would literally take their sneakers, just like you see it in old videos and old film videos and stuff, and tie their shoes together and toss them over trees. But a lot of this stuff was influenced, again, by the culture and the music and the celebrity. Now, celebrities vary. So now we're in a space where it's not so much tied to music. Sometimes it's tied to reality TV or what have you, an actress and a model, what have you. So they're vital conduits, but I think they're conduits of the talent that's already around what's going on in the ethos.
That's an incredible insight. Thank you. I never knew that Adidas and Boston were tied together. So I'm learning a lot tonight. Dominique, can you tell us, do you have any connection to celebrity, or how do you feel that celebrity affects the fashion industry, or whether celebrities are relevant to the fashion industry?
I think music celebrities are extremely relevant to the fashion industry. I think that they are, as a consumer, I think, consumers look to these celebrities to tell them what is hot, what is not hot. I think celebrities actually create the demand for certain types of fashion, like, things that are a little more forward, a little more innovative, less traditional. I personally feel like if celebrities weren't always like trying to, top the next or be on top of things, or like, just rather it's most outrageous or hottest, whatever it is, like, I think that they help to kind of create that demand, which is great for people like me and, who tend to think outside of the box. So yes, definitely.
Well, Cherish, so I know you work for Netflix. You are across all different industries. You're going to have some key insights here.
I'm so confused by this question because in my head I say yes and then no and then yes and then no, and I'll explain. So I grew up when MTV was born. So of course, you know, everything that I saw whoever on my TV was wearing, I must have it. Otherwise, I am not cool. All of that. But then, you know, as I grew up and started to work with folks and on all kinds of levels of where they are with their creativity, I meet them and I'm like, I don't want to wear what you're wearing. And then it turns into, what is celebrity anymore anyway? So you see on TikTok, just, you know, regular folks and kids and teens wearing what they're wearing and becoming very popular and showing the world what's cool in their demographic and their age group. They're not celebrities, but then they kind of become celebrities with all the exposure that some of them have. So that's why my answer is yes, no, and I'm very confused. But it's a great question, and everyone before me spoke a lot of what I was going to say too, and it just supports just, again, expression. It's all about that, right?
Thank you. Yes, a lot of confusion as society is changing so much at the moment as well. And I think we also retain a sort of a rosy vision of how it was when we grew up and how it is now. And, you know, having a 14-year-old daughter and seeing how she interacts with music, I kind of feel it's like, it's not really that different. It's more just phases that we go through in life, but I'm sure we all have very, very different opinions about that. Rick, do you want to have a couple more words about it? You so led us into this question.
It's funny. Yes, I do. We do have a couple more words to say, because as much as I love the celebrities and I talked about them in the past, how they impacted us and influenced us, I think we get lost sometimes and we get confused because we see them more, and that's why I like what Cherish talked about, being confused, because I am also a little bit confused because sometimes we see the celebrity and think they're the one who impacted the fashion and do not realize that the street, like Peter would say, is really what's impacting the celebrities. So they think they're impacting us, but we actually impact them. For example, think Madonna and Vogue. Madonna didn't, everyone think Madonna created Vogue. No, it came from the gay street guys, the guys in Christopher Street doing the street dance, you know, hip hop wear and streetwear came directly from the street. We watch it, Gucci and all of the big brands now. Half of the inspiration came from the street. Why did it took Dapper Dan now from Harlem into Gucci? Again, from the street, because he was street fashion. But we kind of like tune it and put it up to them and say, oh, we are following them, but we are the leaders and they're actually following us. So I love Cherish answer, but I'm confused. So I'm confused too. That's a good one. I'll make a t-shirt with that. I'm confused.
I'm confused about a lot of things in general, but actually that's such a good point. So another way of looking at it perhaps is celebrities can be a tool for normalizing new ideas. So working with digital fashion, it's such a great thing to bring to people in the music industry. So if you have photo shoots, you can have digital clothing. So those things aren't going to be wasted. They're not going to go into landfill after just one use. So by putting digital clothing on music celebrities, then you can normalize the idea of buying and using digital fashion as well. So I think there's probably a lot of other ways as well that they could be a tool for designers to bring new ideas, and a lot of new ideas are just too out there for people initially. So it goes with a lot of styles too. So my next question is, it's how do musicians look to designers to help bring their visions to life, to communicate and to tell the story that they want to tell about themselves or through music. So Peter, you're nodding. I'm going to start with you.
I am not the expert here. No, I'm just. I can't speak for all musicians, but what I can say in my experience and the experience of a lot of artists that I've been around, creativity is a derivative of life and all the nuances that we express through the arts. Pain, joy, dreams, fears, and all the varying emotions and the stories are told through these different mediums. I think that with a visual artist or comes in handy, or even like a designer comes in handy in this regard is, again, they specialize in the visual aspect of how to match your words with that world that you're trying to create. I always think back to certain, like, just think of music videos. That's a perfect convergence of all the worlds coming together. Fashion Week is a perfect convergence of all the worlds coming together in a lot of ways. A lot of people don't realize how many artists that you have there, musicians that you have there that partake in these events, and they're there to be put in the know too. Like as Rick said earlier, I think it's a two-way street with a lot of this influence. And as far as musicians, visual artists, I just think it's, again, concentric circles of creativity that beget each other. But I think that it thoroughly, like the audible artist had its own lane for a long time, but when that world met the visual world and the fashion world, that exploded. That's why we have the influence of like a Beyonce today, who literally shared my brand in her documentary on Lion King, and I wake up the next day with a bunch of sales. So as we said before, it's a two-way street, in my opinion, on the local level, inspiring, and the same vice versa.
Right, it's a two-way street, and that's really exciting news about Beyonce promoting your line. Rick, I have to ask you next as well, because you work so much with musicians and designers. So how much do you think musicians look to designers to help tell their story?
I'll go back to what Peter said, and I think that's where it really, the marriage became very important. I think more so in the past, the musician always kind of like had their own style, and they needed the designers, or actually the people who actually were costume makers back then. Because if you think about back then, when we look at an artist or a musician, they were not really wearing more, it was more considered costume. Like Michael Jackson in the Jackson 5, it wasn't really considered fashion. It was more like costume. So you would have a costume maker. But I think when music video came and the whole streetwear came out and hip hop came, that's when the marriage really took place, that they really needed each other. So I think it's really important for the designer and also for the artist to tell their story, as Peter would say, through having the both mediums come together, because music video really depends on the visuals. You want to see the visuals, and it makes the music even better. And that's why I don't think we have as much people watching music video like they used to when it was MTV and BET. I started at BET with 106 and Park, with AJ and Free, and all the artists would come on there, and people would actually go on to see 106 and Park, not just for the music, but also just to see what Free or AJ was wearing, so that they could actually kind of figure that that's their style. And MTV kind of bring that to the forefront. So I think right now, yes, and with all the technology and Instagram and all that, and they kind of like need each other, the designer and it really helps, as Peter said, because the music has more of a wider reach. So if you have a musician like Beyonce wearing a Peter or a Dominique outfit, it gives the designer a bigger reach, and it gives them a larger opportunity. So that's why most designers are so excited when a celebrity, not so much as an actress or anyone else, but a musician would wear a piece of the outfit. And that's why you would find in the most recent years, a lot of musicians became designers. Like Rihanna totally stopped kind of making music because she makes more money just designing, because she have already created that platform through her music. So that's why she could sell so much. But if she was just a designer who created Fenty or her Fenty look and was just a regular designer, it would take a long time for her to be a billionaire. But because she was always has been a musician, it made it a little bit easier. So they kind of go hand in hand. But unfortunately, the designer really need the musician more than the musician need the designer. So it's a kind of catch-22, but it's a good thing, you know?
And that's a really interesting point as well about people transitioning between different industries as well. There's a lot of musicians, and the fame that they already had is definitely gives them a huge leg up into that, and to get the financing that they need as well to sell their brand. Cherish.
I'm going to fight you on this, Rick. I mean, I think that musicians need designers and visual artists equally. So real talk, I am healing my control issues part of my life, and I don't want to do it all anymore. I am capable of creating visuals and creating and doing it all, but what I'm coming to understand for myself as a creative is not only do I not want to do it all, I want to see how other creatives, and let's say I create music, I want to see how a dancer or a clothing designer or another visual artist interprets my work. So let's say, for example, I create this piece of music and someone who wants to create the visuals says they hear it in black and white and they create a 3-minute black and white film piece with it. I would have never done that. What a delight, what a surprise. And that's why I think it's so important to collaborate and find that synergy just to surprise each other and just to see where you can take that thing you made that came from here, and where it can go next in the sense where, like, I couldn't have done that myself. How amazing. I love that. So I think that we need each other is basically what I want to say. And I don't know who needs each other more, but I think that when that synergy happens and we create things together, what we wouldn't have created solo, I mean, that's just magic. I love that.
I agree. When you put two things together and you don't, 2 + 2 don't equal 4, they equal 5 or 6 or more. So Dominique, I think you probably have some perspective on this, about how you think musicians look to designers to tell their story.
I think that it's definitely a two-way street. I think we both need each other. But I think that, like, what's really cool about some artists is, like, they don't just need designers to help them with the videos and, just whatever appearances, but like Rihanna's a good example of somebody who, like, her Good Girl Gone Bad era, like, she literally embodied that whole, just that whole, the meaning behind her album. It's like, so you would see her on the street. You could look back to that time in her life and you could see just how much, like, they did for her overall image to, like, project that. So I think we need each other. Yeah.
So Dominique, I'm actually going to stay with you for the next question because I think this might be something that's important to you. So without the demands of the next hottest thing, fashion-wise in the music industry, a lot of designers, specifically avant-garde designers, would not have a place in the fashion world. What's your point of view on this?
So I think that basically, I'm not saying designers wouldn't have a place, like, oh, you couldn't exist, but I think that it would be harder to be successful if there was not such a demand in the fashion industry for the next hottest thing, the next most outrageous thing. Like, if there was no Lady Gaga, are you telling me you would see somebody on the street in a meat dress? Like, how many times did you see? Like, I don't know. Would we have ever seen that? I would say somebody like Jeremy Scott, who was told that his designs were just too bizarre. No one was ever going to buy them. But I'm going to mispronounce her name. I think it's Bjork, who is an artist from Iceland. She was an early supporter of his brand, and look at where Jeremy Scott is right now. So I I believe that. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's just it's my opinion.
So my point of view is it comes back to celebrities can normalize ideas and make it more palatable and acceptable. When we see something at the top, it takes a while to filter down. So it's very possible, you're right, it would be hard to get a point, exact data on that. Does anybody have a different point of view on that? I'm going to take it that's a no, but we're all going to agree on that. So I have one more question. And I know that most of you here care about the same thing, is making the world a better place. That's how I met Cherish, and we said we have to collaborate because we both wanted to look at the way music, the way fashion could make the world a better place. So Rick, I'm going to start with you. Do you think together fashion and music can make a difference in the world? Can it make the world a better place?
Oh yeah, I think it do, and I think we still have a lot more work to do. Because I would kind of go back to what Cherish say. We have to really start bringing it back to where we really tap into humanity and their mood and what is really more of your mood. Because now we have so much more people feeling depressed and anxious and the anxiety. So we have to figure out how we could bring music and fashion into a world that because they're the two mediums that really helps anyone out of any kind of depressive state, you know. And it really sometimes could also put you into a whole bigger depressive state because you spend too much money in fashion. So you just spend your your last set of money buying a Birkin bag, or the next trend, But for that moment, it makes you happy and it makes you feel better. So I think it's really important that we kind of like just try to find more artists and more artwork and more designer who are really tapping into human emotion, because I think that's where it all lies, really to tap into it, to make us all feel better, to bring us all together. So I think it's really kind of important for us to continue to create and be creative in a way that still have respect for each other, because I think sometimes we could go outside of our creativity and could become a little bit borderline disrespectful to some people, including the music and also the fashion. So we still have to find a balance between not just the fashion and the music itself, but the difference between the young person and the more mature person, because we have to also remember that we have kids involved. And I think sometimes we are so creative, sometimes we forget that we are inspiring the younger kids, and some of the music and stuff is really not for the younger air. So we have to really find that balance, and some of the fashion is really not also ready for like a younger child. So I think sometimes in being creative, you also have to find that balance. So I think tapping into those emotions is very important.
I love that you raised the issue of respect. I know it's something that you very much live by as well, and kindness and respect for other people. So it's a really, really important issue. Dominique, I'm going to bounce straight back to you. Do you think that fashion and music together can make a difference in the world?
I think so, because I think I would be pretty miserable if I didn't have fashion and music. I think that just the two together have the ability to inspire people, to bring them joy. It reminds us that we're human. Yeah, I don't know what kind of world it would be without two of those things.
Thank you, Peter. I'm so sure you're going to have a really strong opinion on this.
So I think like all things, it's a double-edged sword. I think, as Rick said earlier, we have to be careful about the representation and the influence and the frequencies that we're putting out into the world. And I think that there is a strong separation, again, between, with the advent of social media, marketing, commercialism, capitalism, free market. Those are influencing the art world right now. And I think in a lot of ways it's manipulating the message and the frequency of what we're able to put out, because we are to a degree beholden to the people that are going to invest in our ideas. And if those investors, we don't have the strong wherewithal in us to say, I have to stand my ground and find more people in this vibe, it might take me longer to get my thing off the shelf, but it's what I want to do to keep the message on point. So again, I think it's a double-edged sword in a lot of ways, but I think that clearly music has made a difference throughout the entire, and fashion have made a difference. I mean, fashion is uniforms. Fashion is, music is warning tribal music as another tribe is entering your land. So I do think that, again, if we look at the nuance of it, and that's been my big word for like the last 2 years, is understanding nuance, socioeconomically, fashion and media, and the things that we consume, because everything is consumption, and it's not what we wear is consumption as well. What we listen to is consumption as well. And I'm thankful that Rick had the mindfulness to talk about the children. Because it's sometimes when we're trying to reach the cutting edge, it's some people say it's as simple as, curate what your kids are listening to. Well, in my age, my mom did not have to combat with this. And combating with this is almost impossible to curate what your kids' influences are going to be. And I think it's incumbent upon us in the industry as the tastemakers to be the ones that dictate the balance, because I believe in balance. I think we have to display the atrocities through fashion and music as well to educate people. But at the same time, we have to, keep people whole and be a part of that healing process at the other end of that as well. So.
Thank you. Yes, and healing. I know. Cherish, you're going to take us out with the last answer to the last question with this, because I know that is a key topic for you.
Do I think that together fashion and music can make a difference in the world? Nah. Let's just end this right now. No, I'm kidding. How powerful is the intersection of fashion and music? Let me tell you. So years ago, when I was bringing music to hospice, folks at the hospice there called me the DJ to the dying. So macabre, but that's what they nicknamed me. And basically, I would sit at bedsides playing music that this individual liked, and their family members would give me cues and so on and tell me, this person liked this music and that person liked that. I have so many stories. This is a book on its own. I one day came in wearing a black blouse with red roses all over it. And I met a woman who said, this is my mom, and she had a stroke and she hasn't moved in 2 weeks since Easter. She loves Frank Sinatra. I sat, started playing Frank Sinatra. She started moving, she started dancing in bed. And when she opened her eyes and looked at what I was wearing, she started smiling. So fashion and music being powerful and can change and heal the world? Absolutely. There's so much suffering in the world right now. And I think everything that we can do as creators and people who put it out there in the world, anything and everything we can do to help people feel good and look good, will be changing the world just like that.
Yay!
Change makers, we love it.
Yes, yeah,
Right.
and you are all change makers as well. You're all people with really strong ideas doing amazing things. And thank you so much for all being here tonight. I really appreciate your ideas and your input and your thoughts and your creativity and your general brilliance. And Adrian, thank you too for hosting us.
It's absolutely my pleasure. I love, in my life, at one point in time, I met somebody who called himself a catalyst, and that was the name of his business. And having the opportunity to be in a place where all of a sudden, you can be a catalyst and you can help create like the pinball machine effect of like doing, here we are, and this is us together. I think what you've all presented tonight as real community leaders is so powerful and appreciated. And I especially like some of the messages that we're honing in on about health and wellness, trying to find a pathway through creativity to better happiness and better expressions of freedom. I think that fashion is freedom. I think music is freedom. where we get a chance to freely express how we want to speak that day, whatever message we want to share. And in this case, Claire, you brought together an amazing group of people here tonight and wonderful questions. Thank you all for taking the time to be here. It's been great to just celebrate with you, just us. And we'll have a chance to share this with everybody. But thank you so much for coming together.
Thank you.
Thank you for creating the platform. And we love your studio. I can't wait to come to Rhode Island. I haven't been, but I can't wait to come. I've been talking about it and I need to get to Rhode Island. It's beautiful. Your studio is amazing. And I love the way you presented Claire's work because her work is amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. We look forward to seeing you up there. So yeah, Rhode Island Fashion Week's coming up, and then also we've got New Bedford. There's all sorts of events that will be coming up in New Bedford downtown. And we look forward to seeing you guys in New York too, and finding out what is all going on down there when we can start freely traveling again. Like, we've come through this time where we've really limited what we've done, and we're looking forward to this next phase. It's wonderful to meet all of you. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Great to meet everyone.
Same here.
Bye.
Bye.